everyone, it's Alvin and Elizabeth from The Right Move.
We are back for the next episode of our Condo new launch review where we peel away the hype and share with you guys our honest thoughts about the development, not as agents, but as buyers and investors ourselves, right? Including some of the things that we like and some of the things we don't like about a development.
And today we're going to talk about One North Eden. Let's go!
So let's get into it. We're going to start off with a brief intro into the One North area,
followed by details about the project itself, and then ending off with the 3 things we like and don't like about One North Eden.
One North as a location for a condominium is unique in the sense that the whole area is master planned and master developed by JTC.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar with JTC, the function is to champion the industrial development of Singapore.
With that, their primary focus was to make One North a commercial success, and on that part, we must say they have done a pretty good job.
Hence, most of us, when we hear about One North, we know about Fusionopolis, Biopolis, and all the companies that are moving into that area, but none of us really think of it as a residential area.
Which is why, as a location, we feel that it's been somewhat overlooked, so to speak.
Mainly because there just really isn't that many condos over there, just 4 of them. And as you can see, they are spaced out between 2 that were launched 20 years ago and 2 that were launched 10 years ago.
And so here we are, right about time for the next condo.
And you might be thinking, wait a minute, don't they usually release more than 1 plot every 10 years?
And you're absolutely right. There are actually 2 other sites that are slated for sale in the middle of 2021, and they are located right behind One North Eden.
So what are the possible implications of these 2 plots beside One North Eden? We'll touch on that later in the video.
Onto the general information of the development. We are going to run through this quite fast because if you are here, you most likely have already done some sort of research on the development.
But just in case you're hearing about One North Eden for the first time, we'll be putting links to the project website in the description below so you can find all the details you need.
One North Eden is located along One North Gateway, a short 5 to 7 minutes walk to either One North MRT or Buona Vista MRT.
For amenities, we have Star Vista, and for more affordable food options, we have Holland Drive and Ghim Moh Hawker Centre slightly further away.
And for schools, we are within 1 km of a popular primary school, Fairfield Methodist School.
One North Eden is being developed as a joint venture between 2 very experienced developers, Mitsui, Fudosan and Leong. We're expecting 165 units broken down as follows.
The project is expected to TOP in late 2024 or early 2025. Do note that due to its proximity to the MRT, the development will only cater 80% of the car park.
So on to the 3 things we like and don't like about One North Eden. First thing that we like, mature transformation.
So what do we mean by mature transformation? A lot of the time when we talk about transformation, it's something that's going to happen 10, 20, 30 years down the road. For example, the Greater Southern Waterfront or the Paya Lebar Air Base transformation.
But the One North area has been undergoing transformation since 2001, a good 20 years ago.
Some of you may say, oh, then am I late to the game? Am I paying a premium because there's already been growth? We're going to answer this in one of our next points.
What we see is that you're buying into the midpoint of this whole transformation and you're not taking the sort of risk that the first movers are taking. And some of them did take a loss, which we will show you later.
For us, we see this point of entry into the transformation as somewhat of a sweet spot as the companies, the tenants, they are already there. But yet, there's still room for more transformation to happen within the One North itself, and also because we are so near to the Greater Southern Waterfront to also benefit from it.
Which give us exit options in the mid to long term.
Point 2 on why we like One North Eden, demand and supply.
We don't think there's anywhere else in Singapore where we can find such a location with so little residential properties catering to so many jobs.
With just 2,075 existing condo units in the entire One North, catering to an expected 50,000 knowledge workers according to this JTC guide.
This huge imbalance of demand and supply is actually supplementing the areas surrounding One North as we see tenants moving to areas like Queenstown, Clementi and West Coast.
But if you think about it, should there be a higher supply of units available in this area, we are pretty sure the tenants would rather stay closer to work.
Let's take a look at some of the actual numbers. There were 403 rental contracts across 4 condos in 6 months, which come up to an average rental take-up rate of 67 units a month, with 115 available today, you can be pretty sure rentals will be very quickly absorbed.
And since we are here, let's take a look at the sales figures. With 46 units sold in 6 months and 210 available on the market currently, we may expect selling to take time. But as you break down the numbers into different unit types, there are some pretty interesting observations which we have included in our pre-launch consultation.
And for investors looking to have it for rental, do check out our video on high rental yield units where we discuss about where to find high yielding rental properties and how we analyze rental yields. Links are either in the description or somewhere on this video.
And on to the third and final point about what we like about One North Eden, pricing and timing.
We're going to talk about two things. The first is One North Eden's price comparison compared to the other developments that are selling transformation. And the second would be the developer's break-even price, which will lead us to timing.
So assuming One North Eden launches at 2000 PSF, of course the lower the better, let's take a look at how that compares with the rest of the developments.
We have Cambridge Hill, Avenue South Residences, The Reef and Normanton Park. All of them have very different value propositions, but if we just look purely on a per square foot basis, One North Eden should fall nicely in the middle between The Reef, Avenue South Residences, Normanton Park and Cambridge Hill Residences.
But with the rest of them primarily playing into the Greater Southern Waterfront, which would take a longer time to materialize, versus One North Eden where you are already getting something tangible.
We see an attractive entry price at around 2000 PSF. Anything lower would be a really good deal.
A really worthwhile and interesting exercise to do would be to compare the different types of units within these different new launch developments and their difference in prices, which will play a big part in your exit.
On to the second point on pricing, the developer's break-even price. With a break-even PSF of around 1,600 per square feet, here's a breakdown of the expected sale price depending on the developer's profit margin.
With the recent launches of Midtown Modern and The Reef achieving very good sell-through rates with PSF in excess of 2,400, the developers can afford to be greedy, considering their low break-even price.
But if we take reference to the sale of Penrose, another project by Leong, they tend to be conservative in their pricing, at least for the first batch of units launched in order to move sales.
So anywhere in the range of 1,800 to 2,000 PSF thereabouts will still represent very good margins for the developers.
Which moves us to the final point on timing. How did the developers manage to have a considerably lower break-even price?
One interesting thing to note is that One North Eden is one of the plots of land that was sold after the 2018 cooling measures.
With the developers still trying to figure out how to make money with the new measures and minimum average unit size, while concurrently clearing their inventory, they were understandably more cautious with the site attracting just 9 bidders.
Comparing this to the most recent Tanah land sale, which attracted 15 bidders.
So with developers' inventory depleting rapidly, we expect to see a much higher number of bidders for the next 2 plots, which will inevitably lead to higher prices. And now, moving on to the 3 things that we don't like about One North Eden. Number 1, the lack of amenities and upgraded demand.
Being a primarily commercial location made up mostly of offices has resulted in One North being pretty much devoid of the amenities that you would expect from more residential areas.
While we have Star Vista and Rochester Mall, there are no coffee shops, hawker centres or wet markets.
The popularity of delivery services nowadays will negate this downside for tenants, but for those who look to stay there in the long term may find it a bit of a hassle.
Especially upgraders, which is why you don't really see many of them.
As seen in this consolidated data over the 4 condos showing the breakdown of HDB buyers against condo buyers.
For those of you who follow us, you know that we will very much prefer areas that attract a large number of HDB upgraders as they form the largest pool of buyers in the market.
It's not to say that without them there will be no profits to be made, as we have seen quite a fair bit of profitable transactions in One North. But like we mentioned earlier, you will have to factor more time for selling.
And on to point number 2, the number of units.
Another one factor that we always talk about is the number of units in a development. And at 165, One North Eden is on the small side by our standards.
Some of the downsides that come with a development with lesser units is the lack of transactions to help push up prices, and also there perhaps isn't sufficient units for the developers to really stage the prices up significantly.
But again, that doesn't mean there's no profits to be made. Again, you just gotta make sure you prepare yourself for a longer holding period. Which brings us to our final point, the holding period.
So with a lack of upgraded demand and the number of units, you have to factor a longer holding period. So it's probably not the project for you if you're looking for a quick 3 to 5 year flip.
Remember we mentioned about the number of previous loss-making transactions in One North? Notice how the loss-making units all have relatively short holding periods versus the profitable transactions. And while we are on this page, another interesting thing to note is the purchase price of the non-profitable units. At 1.5 to 1.6k PSF in 2011-2012, it's significantly overpriced for that period of time. And it was probably down to the fact that they overpaid for transformation.
Hence, that's why we always say, while transformation is good, take it with a pinch of salt and never let it be your sole criteria for purchase.
So, in summary, One of Eden can be summarized into these three things: mature transformation, high employment, low supply. And we like it because you're not paying over the top for the whole transformation story anymore.
But because of the low number of units and the lack of upgraded demand, do factor a longer holding period in your plans.
And speaking of plans, make sure that you do your pre-launch planning properly. You can use our checklist as a guide. Think about the questions we asked earlier, such as comparisons of the quantums of each unit type against launches in the vicinity, or even resale units in the vicinity as well, right? You would also want to keep up to date about the real estate market updates, understand the preferences of buyers in the vicinity, work out finances, timeline planning, and explore alternatives.
And during the preview, you want to utilize the research that we have done to pick up the recommendations. Number 2, have layout and size comparisons. And number 3, facing comparisons. And after the purchase, do interest rate analysis, timeline review, mortgage loan comparisons, the CPF usage that you should be using, payment timelines, and then we'll also give you periodic market updates and a periodic portfolio assessment.
But if you're unsure about how to do the planning properly, or you want to just find out more about One North Eden, drop us a DM, text, call us, anything, and we'll be happy to help you or share it with you in greater detail.
And before we go, if you have found this video useful, please do help us like and subscribe as it will help out our channel a ton. See you!
Bye!